Yeah. Yes, this is Phil Zimmerman. Welcome to the noon meeting of E-Rotary Coastal Club. We are in the process of continuing our exploration of everything coastal, and we welcome you to today's meeting. We in Rotary tradition, we have three things we do. We do a prayer, pledge, and four-way test. Let me start off with the prayer. Lord, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the gorgeous weather that you're giving us here in South Louisiana and across the South today. Allow it to continue. Protect those who are in the working on our coastline, restoring it to its, protecting it and restoring it, and protecting its coastal residents. Pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. We also have the Pledge of Allegiance. Of course, if you're over in Iraq, Iran, Russia, somewhere at India, at a Rotary meeting, I don't think they'd be saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, but here in America, Rotary clubs, we say the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Charles. Now, Charles supplied that beautiful flag with the weather in the background, the sea scene in the background. I like that. Very nice. And then, of course, the four-way test for Rotary. These are the things that we think, say, and do as a Rotarian. We are a global service organization, 1.2 million members, 45,000 clubs worldwide, and our desire is to make sure that...
We're going to have to remove those hearing aids. This is a device to remove all.
Hold on, just excuse me. Hold on a second. Charles, can you continue, please?
Sure. Actually, Philip is demonstrating service above self. He is tending to family in addition to running a meeting. But anyway, the four-way test is what we agreed to do as Rotarians, what we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and friendships and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? Again, this is what we commit to as Rotarians. Today we have joining us Mr. Reggie Dupre. Reggie is has some deep roots. I mean, besides being a native son of Terrebonne Parish, he's also our former senator, and as he will explain to you in a moment, has been very instrumental both at the legislature and now as the director of our Levee district in not only formulating policy, but also literally putting dirt on the ground and locks and levees and just all manner of things. Terrebonne Parish leads the coast in terms of its actual physical projects in terms of that it's been able to accomplish. And again, Reggie, we're very fortunate to have someone with his experience, both practical and legislatively, policy-wise, with us today. Again, he's a former state senator, now runs the Levee district, which was formed and under his management. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Reggie Dupre as I pass the presenter role over to Reggie. Reggie, welcome to Rotary.
Thank you very much. Okay, so first a little bit more of an introduction. My name's Reggie Dupre. I've been the Levee District Director for Terrebonne Levee and Conservation District since the summer of '09. Prior to that, I have about 21 consecutive years of elected public service as a parish council member, first in the 80s, a state representative for about 5 years, and then finally a state senator representing District 20, which is with majority of Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes along the coast from pretty much Grand Isle to the Atchafalaya River. Before getting into Morgan to the Gulf and Terrebonne Levee District's activities, probably I would consider my most notable legislative or public policy achievements as a senator was the two things. Right after Katrina, some major policy issues were undertaken by the state legislature. I was the lead author of the bill that created the Coastal Restoration and Protection Authority, where we consolidated coastal protection and restoration under one umbrella under the governor's office. It's gone quite well, and we've ordered this new agency every 5 years to do a master plan the CPRA has just done their third master plan, 07, 12, and then 17. So now we're working on the third version of the master plan, which I understand all have gotten either unanimous or close to unanimous support. I guess the other second major achievement, which I consider probably more important in creation of CPRA, is the constitutional dedication of all offshore oil and gas revenues to coastal protection and restoration. Right after Katrina, we put that on the ballot. We got a unanimous vote of the legislature and an 82% vote in the voters in 2006. So I believe that a recurring source of revenue for the coast is actually more important than the governmental agency that's going to implement these projects. So it's a close race, but I consider that the number one policy that I've dealt with. So now getting into Terrebonne Levee District and Morganza to the Gulf, I'm the chief executive of the Terrebonne Levee District. It's a political subdivision of the state. We are autonomous from the parish government, although we do work very, very closely with Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government. We are the local agency, along with CPRA as our partner on the non-federal side for to implement, build, and maintain the Morganza to the Gulf Hurricane Protection System. Since Katrina, the Corps of Engineers has changed their terminology. Now they call them Hurricane Risk Reduction Systems. They've taken the word protection out of it, I guess for liability reasons. We have a unique story here in Terrebonne Parish. We started dealing with the federal government in 1992 is when the first reconnaissance study for Morganza to the Gulf was authorized in a WERDA bill. And here we are 27, 28 years later. We have not received one dime of construction money, but $72 million has been spent studying us, and we've been to Congress 3 times. Finally, in 2014, we did get federal authorization from Congress on what is now a $10.3 billion system. But we didn't sit on our hands. We basically took matters in our own hands, and we started building this project. We started building a federal project with no federal money. So we are now about $400 million into this using state and local funds. The big secret of our success in this area and in my neighboring parish, in Lafouche Parish, is that the people, the citizens of these 2 parishes, are willing to tax themselves to do what is necessary to protect us and for resiliency purposes so we can survive into the future. Right now in Terrebonne Parish, there are 3 levels of taxation that go to Terrebonne Levee District. We have the constitutional 5 mills, which is for O&M, operation and maintenance purposes. That brings in a little, almost $5 million. But we also have a 1.25 cents, or a total of 3/4 of a cent sale taxes that goes to construction projects, and that having a local match going to the governor has been very, very effective for us. Not going hand in hand. We want. I learned a long time ago there's a big difference between a helping hand and a handout, and we asking for a helping hand. And it's been very, very successful. So pretty much right now the math comes out almost 50-50, 50% state money, whether it's old state surpluses, capital outlay, or other grants indirectly coming to the state, with the local funds we've been able to raise directly or bonding out that revenue source. So that's sort of the big picture where we at. We're still hoping that one day Big Brothers will come save us and start spending some dollars along our alignment. Now, one question that frequently comes up is why our protection system is called Morganza to the Gulf. Morganza, Louisiana, is 120 miles north of here on the west bank of the Mississippi River, north of Baton Rouge. The original study area was from Morganza, Louisiana, to the Gulf of Mexico, bounded on the west by the Atchafalaya River, on the east by the Mississippi River and Bayou Lafourche. So that large area was the study area, and what came out of it was some kind of storm surge protection, primarily in Terrebonne and parts of Lafourche Parish. I'm having a little hard time to advance the slides. I don't know. Let's see. Charles, can you help me with this?
Sure, of course. Are they advancing on your computer?
No.
Okay.
It's on the cover page. It says e-rotary presentation.
Yes, sir. Basically, we're seeing what you see. So it may be your computer is frozen or locked up somehow. Can you do anything else on your computer? Check email. I mean, there's other. You might want to just maybe restart the presentation. I see your mouse moving. That's good. Okay, so we're seeing your screen.
Moving.
Yes, sir.
Hold on. Hold on. It's not moving. Oh, there it is.
There's a view. We have
okay.
It. Thank you.
So
Perfect.
what you're looking at now is the overall map of the entire region. This is not all of Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes, but this is the Morganza alignment and the La Rose to Golden Meadow alignments in purple to the right. And at the bottom right side of the picture, you'll see Port Fourchon. My region of the state of Louisiana, the Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes, our main economic driver is oil and gas. We live and die by oil and gas, and the reason why I have Port Fourchon on this map, because Port Fourchon is the largest energy port in the United States, and we are the communities that support the energy industry. And you can see the proximity of how the Levee projects coincide to Port Fourchon and how it fits. One thing I've often said in the past, of course, La Rose to Golden Meadow is much older than Morganza to the Gulf, but if you erase the purple lines on the map, Golden Meadow would probably not exist today, and further, as you go north, you might have a little bit of the ridge there. But if La Rose to Golden Meadow would have not been built, you would have had Port Fourchon, so the major energy port would not be here in Louisiana. It would probably be in Galveston, Texas, or in Biloxi or somewhere else, but not here. So that has been one of the major economic drivers, is having communities to live in a close proximity to our port. The other part, you can see the Morganza alignment goes from Gibson, Louisiana to Lockport in Lafourche Parish. It is 98 miles long. About 8 miles of it overlies on top of the La Rose to Golden Meadow alignment. This is on the last version from the 2014 Word Bill. And like I've said earlier, we've been to Congress 3 times, and this is the final, the final version of it. Also on this map, you will see some red lines. Those are the parish drainage levees, which now acting as redundant systems, like the ring levee around the Chauvin community or Grand Caillou. The tan-colored levee lines are not in the Morganza alignments. They are the local levees that my agency, Terrebonne Levee District, maintains. Red ones are maintained by the Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government. So what we are truly building is a multiple lines of defense strategy, where, of course, our Barrier Islands is on first line of defense. Marsh restoration south of the levee alignment would be next. Then this main line of Morganza and La Rose to Golden Meadows, the main levee line of protection. And in some communities, you have a secondary line, ring levees around the around these individual bayou communities. So if you look at the Chauvin area, where you see Lake Boudreaux on the map, that is a massive basin which acts as a reservoir. So if we would have a major tidal surge, and we would have overtopping along the Morganza alignment, well, you have a second line of defense, and you have a major reservoir, and you have at least a fighting chance for these communities to survive a hurricane. The federal alignment, we follow the federal alignment, but the federal heights and widths of these levees, I don't know if I'll ever live long enough to see them. Some areas is 23 feet. Well, that's just, it would take a massive amount of funding, which we don't have at this time. So what we've decided to do is build what we can afford to in the most vulnerable places. In the 2008 hurricanes. The doubleheader in 2008 was Hurricanes Gustav and Ike. Hurricane Ike, 2 weeks after Gustav, made landfall in Galveston, Texas, and it put a 9.5-foot tidal surge on southern Terrebonne. Now, this is the highest tidal surge we've seen in modern history since 1926. So, if we would have a 10-foot line of protection, we would have stopped flooding for just about every event, and we have flooded 10 or 12 times since the 1980s. So, in 2008, after going to Congress a couple of times and constantly seeing the bureaucratic delays, we just were so frustrated we decided to start to build this project on our own, applying for 404 permits and doing our own mitigation. And we set ourselves a goal back then in late 2008 of connecting the 5 bayou communities of Terrebonne Parish together between Pont-au-Chien and Bayou du Large. You can see on this map how Pont-au-Chien is the parish line between Lafourche and Terrebonne, and we have 5 fingers or bayou communities that go south of Houma towards the Gulf of Mexico. Well, we have met that goal of connecting the 5 bayou communities together with floodgates and levees as of the end of 2017 with 0 federal appropriations from Congress. And now we're working into Lafourche Parish going towards Cutoff, and we're working on the west side of the Bayou du Large Ridge going up towards the Houma area. So we like I said, it's about $400 million that has been spent or is currently under construction now. So the next slides I have is some pictures, a few pictures of our projects. This is one of the older floodgates that was built in 1992 by with state capital outlay dollars for $4.2 million. This is a 56-foot wide Bayou Terrebonne floodgate south of Montague. Now, it cost $4.2 million, but I want to note something. In 1985, 7 years earlier, the Corps of Engineers
Charles, you there?
I'm here. Reggie, we lost you. Not sure what happened here.
I think we lost.
Hello?
Hey, Reggie,
Yes.
you back?
Yes, I'm here.
I'm sorry, we lost you for a second. Go ahead, please. Continue.
Okay. So anyway, I just want to note that local agencies can build these projects a lot cheaper than federal agencies, and this is a perfect example. The same identical plans were used in La Rose for this same sister floodgate. We spent $4.2 million in 1992. The Corps spent $7 million in La Rose for the same identical gate you're looking at. That's just an example of the difference, I guess, in efficiencies. This is we made a decision with being we had limited resources. A barge floodgate was put in Humboldt Canal in Lower Montague in 1995 at $1.5 million. The reason why we're using barge floodgates is because they are about 1/3 the cost of sector gates or the typical floodgates that the Corps prefers. They are a pain to operate. It takes an hour and a half to close this gate. It takes only 3 minutes to close the other one you just saw, the sector gate. But once it's closed, it works just as well and holds the water back. So because we are giving up efficiency we've given up convenience for protection, basically, because we have so much limited dollars. And that's why most of our newer floodgates, all of them are pretty much all barge floodgates. But this decision back in 95 was made to start to go in that direction because of that. This is after I got to Levee District in 2009, we had started building, when I first got here, there were 5 navigable floodgates. We now have 12. Terrebonne Levee District does, and number 13 is under construction. This is the first one of the newer ones. This is the Bush Canal Willis Henry floodgate in Lower Bayou Terrebonne, built for $16 million and constructed in 2011. It is 18 feet above sea level. It's a 56-foot opening. This is what I consider the crown jewel of our local efforts. This is the Houma Navigational Canal, Bubba Dove floodgate. This picture just does not do it justice because that canal is 1,000 feet wide from bank to bank at that location. That opening is 250 feet wide for the canal. This is 18 feet above sea level. As far as I can tell, this is the largest non-federal navigable floodgate built in the United States of America. We spent $50 million, primarily of local dollars, to build this gate. And the Houma Navigational Canal is a 35-mile channel from downtown Houma to the Gulf of Mexico that was dug in the early 60s, about 1962. It has eroded the wetlands and brought in salt water, but it is also our lifeblood to our economy. So this is sort of like our Mr. Go. We don't want to close this. We just want to be able to control it. So back in 2013, we completed this with bonding out some local revenue, and we the total cost was $52.6 million with the engineering and design cost to build this. And like I said, this is what we consider the crown jewel of our efforts. That barge you're looking at is 273 feet long, 60 feet wide. It's almost the size of a football field, and it goes down to minus 24 sill depth and to a plus 18. So that barge is 42 feet high. It's a massive, massive piece of equipment. This is a more recent floodgate we just finished. It's 110 foot wide at Bayou Petit Caillou, the most southern structure in our system. This is 4 miles north of Cocodrie. This is also our first road gate we've built along our system on Louisiana Highway 56. We have a total construction here of $23.1 million, and we just dedicated that in early 2016. This is a floodgate, this is an artist rendition. This is under construction, a $35 million floodgate in Fagu Canal on the west side of Bayou du Large. This is kind of have some unique funding. The parish government put up $16.8 million of CDBG funding they received after 2008 disasters, and we got some state capital outlay from the governor and legislature of 13.8. And then the rest of it, $5 million or so, is being matched by local taxpayer dollars. So that floodgate is currently under construction and will be completed for the 2019 hurricane season. This is some examples of some of our levees. This is an old levee that was originally built in 1995 for $2 million along the Bayou Terrebonne ridge, lower Bayou Terrebonne, and we've been doing some improvements to it as we go. On rehabilitation. This is a good example of a recent levee. This is probably one of the most challenging levees we built, most expensive per mile. This is the Reach G2 levee. It's 2 miles. G2B is 2 miles long. It crosses Sweetwater Pond, which is about 6 or 7 feet deep. Now the levee is 13 and a half feet tall. And because it's crossing open water, we paid an extra $1.3 million to armor both sides of it because of wave action and erosion. And you can see in this picture that you can see 2 of the 3 environmental structures that go through the levee, where you have gates, culverts and sluice gates, where we only close for storms. So you can see, I think what you see at the bottom of the picture is 6 foot round culverts with gates, and then there's 8 on the one on Sweetwater Pond further up in the middle of the picture. And that picture is looking west towards the Houma Navigational Canal or the Full Point area. Okay, so next I want to besides building levees and floodgates, the Terrebonne Levee District self-performs a lot of our mitigation efforts. There's a statute that was passed, I think, in 2010 with a CPRA bill, giving political subdivisions the right to self-perform their mitigation activities. I think on permitting, it's called Permittee Responsible Mitigation, of PRM efforts. We have built probably 500 or 600 acres of wetlands in the last few years on our own, and this is all compensatory mitigation from our 404 permits. Terrebonne Levee District owns 2 marsh buggy excavators. Here is one of them that is working where they dig. They go in shallow open water. They build wetland terraces. This is a picture right here of the J2 terracing, which is along the J1 levee. So what you're looking at is Lower Pontchartrain, where the Island Road, looking north. You can see 6 or 7 rows of wetland terraces on the outboard side of the levee, and on the most of the water you see there is Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries, the Pontchartrain Wildlife Management Area. So all those wetland terraces to the left side that parallel the levee are all built by our own equipment, our own personnel. We average about $20,000 an acre to build mitigation. The alternative is that we have to buy it from a wetland bank, and there's very, very few banks that build that focus on saline or brackish marsh. So if we forced into a wetland bank, we have to go out of parish and spend anywhere between $120,000 to $230,000 an acre, when we can do it on our own for $20,000 an acre right here. Plus, it serves the purpose of protecting a levee, or protecting highways, or protect communities and infrastructure. So mitigation that protects your projects is always much more valuable, in my opinion, than just buying into a bank somewhere that you never go see it. And this is why this is our favorite mitigation. We also design and build marsh creation projects. This is one we recently built. This was right after it was finished several months ago. This is a 205-acre tract that was open water. You're looking north on this picture towards Houma, towards Dulac, and that's the Houma Navigational Canal, or alongside of it. We dredged out of the Houma Navigational Canal, and a contractor did all this. We built that 205 acres for $24,000 an acre. And then remember, compare that to what it would cost us at a mitigation bank. The minimum price, if we had to buy it, was $120. So we're building it considerably cheaper, and is built in our own parish, and is converting open water into wetlands. So this is the other technique other than wetland terracing is marsh creation. So this is an example of a marsh creation mitigation project. Future projects, one big future project we're working on, Terrebonne Levee District is acting as the agent of CPRA with Restore Act dollars to convert the Bubba Houma Navigational Canal floodgate to a navigable lock. The Corps' authorized federal project always anticipated having a lock on the Houma Navigational Canal. The federal plan would have been to the left side of this picture, or the west side of the channel, because this artist rendition is looking north. We made a decision together with state CPRA. We would prefer building the lock chamber on the east side, or the right side of the picture here, for 3 basic reasons. Number one is the cost. The cost of the federal program was over $600 million. This is going to be $300 to $350 million. Second reason is the direct wetland impacts. The federal plan would have had 157 acres of direct wetland impacts. Over here, what we're planning on doing is about 30 acres. And I guess more important for the long-term stability is building a lock on the left side of this picture would have not been accessible by any vehicles. You would have had to maintain and operate this lock with marine equipment. On the east side or the right side, you can drive 18-wheelers. You have a 3-phase electric line. So for the operation and maintenance purposes, it's much better to be able to drive to the facility than having to take a boat to it. So because of those 3 things, we are applying for a 404 permit now to build this lock. We will be using Restore Act dollars. Now, remember, we already have a floodgate. We have the $53 million floodgate at this location, because the barge you see in the middle of it is the Bubba Dove floodgate. This $350 million plan calls for building the lock chamber and retrofitting the floodgate to full core 1% or 100-year standards for flood protection. The purpose of this lock is more environmental than it is flood protection. We already have a floodgate to close for storms, for tropical events. But the reason, the only source of fresh water we have in Terrebonne Parish is from the Atchafalaya River down the Intercoastal Canal, and about 70% of what comes in from the Intercoastal from Morgan City goes down the Houma Navigational Canal and goes into the Gulf of Mexico. So as part of the overall Morganza system, having this lock, it serves a double environmental purpose. First of all, for normal conditions or for high river, as you do right now, if you have the lock closed and you have the environmental structures east and west of this lock open, then you will be forcing fresh water east and west of here to replenish the wetlands. But the reverse is also true, that when you have a drought condition and you have salt water getting all the way into Houma, you can stop the salt water right here. So this location is about halfway down the Houma Navigational Canal. It's about 16 miles south of Houma in the southern part of Dulac and above Cocodrie. And Cocodrie is 12 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. Now, the big advantage, I guess, for flood protection-wise, is going to be for the navigation industry. Right now, with a barge flood, that massive barge floodgate, it takes about 3.5 hours to close it. Once it's closed, you can't reopen it. Just say, I have one more boat coming through. Please open the door. But once you close, that's it. You close for the duration of an event. With a lock, you have the flexibility until winds are blowing beyond tropical force winds. You can probably operate this until about 40-mile-an-hour winds and about a 4 or 5 foot tidal difference. So you don't have that luxury now. So when we shut it down, people have to, the vessels and marine industry has to seek safe harbor elsewhere, like the Atchafalaya River, and very, very risky for people to go back around the Gulf with a storm bearing down on us or a hurricane. So they will give us the luxury of letting the navigation industry continue to be locked in when a hurricane is coming, when you have high water. But primarily, this will be operated as an environmental structure to disperse fresh water east and west of that location. So that's I'm back to the same map we were at, and that's kind of an overview of what we've been doing, and we continue moving forward. And like I said, we have projects now in Lafourche Parish. When you get east of the Pointe-aux-Champs floodgate on this map, that is South Lafourche Levee District jurisdictional area. They have a couple of contracts going on now in that area, and Terrebonne Levee District is doing some improvements in Lower Bayou du Large as well as the Fago Canal floodgate. Just one other thing to mention, now that we're in a high river condition, we did build some emergency levees on the western extension of Morganza to the left side of the blue line from Gibson to along Bayou Black. And right now we're looking at doing some repairs to that. So we have about 12 miles of levees that's not connected to the rest of it. The red line in the map, Reach A, is probably several years away. That's going to be the last link. But I honestly believe today, if we have another Ike or a Rita and we get another 9.5 foot tidal surge, we will reduce flooding threats in Terrebonne Parish by about 90% of what we had before. So God only knows how much flood insurance claims will not have to be paid by FEMA because of what's been done. So that's all. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Reggie. This is Philip. What a fantastic presentation. I'm Val Marmillion of America's Wetlands Foundation is one of our members, and he's starting an effort to try to put together all the private money that's being invested in the coastal area to show the nation, in essence, that there are private citizens who are concerned about this. And I'm just very impressed of the local money that y'all have been able to pool together to fund these projects. I mean, that's a lot of money that y'all have invested in these levees, and that is and again, I just wasn't aware of it. I mean, just totally up here in Baton Rouge, I'm just not aware of what's happening down the coast. It's fascinating and very much appreciated. Charles, you have anything?
I do. Reggie, when the Fago Canal floodgates is closed, will that be the last link? I mean, will Terrebonne Parish be completely enclosed at that point?
Well, southern Terrebonne Parish will be completely enclosed. I guess what's new on the horizon is Parish President Dove here in Terrebonne Parish is going to be refinancing the quarter-cent sale tax, which was originally passed in 2001. We will be receiving $15 million, and part of that $15 million is to build a northern tie-in to the floodgate. We will finally be able to look at building something on Marmont Canal, which is on this map is right below the word Dularge, the red dot, and connecting those old parish levees together. And then we're also trying to determine a final alignment of the red line of Reach A and finish to full height and width the area of Reach J2 between Montague and Pointe-aux-Chenes. So that $15 million, I was told yesterday we should be getting that sometime around mid-May, which is another local source of funding we'll be putting on the table.
Well, it's encouraging to see all the work. Kind of a follow-up question. What about private landowners? What can private landowners do to enhance or support or help in any way? I mean, certainly, like keeping the trees from falling in the bayou on Dularge isn't a big issue, but I mean, have private landowners been engaged in any way in coastal restoration?
Well, let me tell you, what you have to understand is 85% of the wetlands in Terrebonne Parish is owned by three companies: ConocoPhillips, Apache, and Continental Land and Fur is number 3 in western Terrebonne. The fourth largest landowner is probably Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries in the Pointe-aux-Chenes Wildlife Management Area. If you add up those four together, you probably at 90% of the wetlands. So when we have to get right-of-ways for these levees, when we have to build mitigation, we obviously dealing with the larger landowners. Most of the work we do is in the remote areas, not away from the ridge, and these large landowners have been very, very helpful to us. And if you think about it, that's why there's not been that much interest in this part of the world of suing the oil companies. I mean, the oil companies own most of the wetlands in my parish. So first of all, if we would file suit against them, then they certainly would not give us the right-of-ways. We'd force us into court, and we would not have built the $400 million of efforts that you see here. So it's been a good relationship, and we don't want to bite the hand that feeds us, because then, they are going to be funding money through GOMESA, but that's why, a lot of people say, well, why don't y'all join New Orleans and sue the oil companies? I say, well, then we'd be nowhere. We would drown. That's what would happen. Right. So basically the landowners pretty much give us the land rights to build these mitigation projects, and we are restoring that land. It's been a good, a good partnership. Now there's a bill that's pending this year in the state legislature filed by Jerome Zarang to allow for public-private partnerships to build these coastal restoration and protection projects. And I think if it goes through, you may see some of that going on when you have a funding source that's coming in, like Restore Act is over a 15-year basis. Well, if you have a contractor that's willing to finance it and build a project and then get their money over a number of years, that's how those type of projects would work.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, very good. Excellent presentation, Reggie. As a citizen of Terrebonne Parish, I'm proud to see the work that you've accomplished and the willingness to step forward and find solutions. It's just a great testament to people of Louisiana, but again, I'm prejudiced to where we live. It's a great place to be, Terrebonne Parish. Philip, closing comments?
No, just another fantastic presentation. I'm also impressed by the graphic that was being used, because it really does show the extent of the land loss we've already experienced in the state, and it is just a vital concern for. I really liked Reggie pointing out the fact of Port Fourchon and the importance of that in the energy sector and the vitality of that port, as well as the rest of our coastal areas in regards to the economic benefit of South Louisiana and its contribution to the state pot up here in Baton Rouge that gets distributed all throughout the state. That this is an area that we can't lose. It's worth the effort. Obviously, there's a lot of public money at the local level being spent to protect the area, and the more that we can do to help inform the other residents in our state of the plight that's being faced of those in Terrebonne Parish, as well as the other parishes along the coastal zone, the better for us as Louisiana citizens. So, Reggie, thank you for all your work you're doing down there, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to mention one last thing I failed to mention. We're starting to see some collateral environmental benefits of this levee protection, because Morganza to the Gulf is a leaky levee system where you have wetlands on either side of the. So this is not a pump and drain system where you're putting up levees and putting up pump stations and draining everything inside and making the mistakes that were done like in New Orleans East in the past. What we are seeing now is on the inside of our levees, like in the wildlife management area near Montague or the Lake Boudreaux Basin, we're starting to see freshwater species of vegetation and a marine species coming back. We're starting to see more bass are coming back. We're starting to see, cattails where you haven't seen them in 20 years behind Montague. So it's starting to show a slow rebirth, and but we don't get credit for that, and we think we should, because if you're going to stop the erosion and start to see some gains just because you're stopping that unlimited salt water from getting into this area, I mean, that's worth looking at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I enjoy the growth again behind the levee here in Dularge as well. It's just good to see. Well, with that, Philip, are we? I
think we're good. Thank you, Reggie, for joining us today, and we look forward to following you in the future. For those who are not familiar with the Terrebonne Levee Conservation District, it's tlcd.org on your internet, and you'll be able to look up all the activities that they're doing. And please continue to, whenever you hear of opportunities to work on the coast or be of assistance, to think of Reggie and his group if you can need some help. So thank you again, Reggie.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you sign us off.
All right, great. Again, folks, thanks for everything, and we'll reconvene in a couple of weeks. Have a great